Oh, it's Thursday. Been feeling a little bit crabby this week. A little bit shellfish. Been a bit of a hermit, so maybe I just need to get out of my shell. We're making hermit crabs. We're making hermit crabs this week. And what's really cool about these hermit crabs is that you can swap their shells. Let's get into it. Now, a little bit of admin, given that you're very interested in everything around you, aren't you? So a little bit of admin today, just before we kind of get started. There's a lot of new faces here, which is really exciting. Sorry, I have to interrupt myself for a second there, because as I go to record this, I'm like 100 subs away from hitting 50,000. Yeah, thank you guys so much. And really cool. But I also know from the comments that a chunk of you guys don't actually crochet. So I understand that you probably won't get a lot out of pattern content. In fact, you probably won't have clicked on this video. But I just wanted to reassure anybody who has clicked on this video that I will be still doing patterns on here, as well as the sort of challenge content. There's going to be a mix of both every month. Okay, let's talk tools and materials. So for today's project, you're going to need 8-ply 100% acrylic yarn in at least 2 colors, but I'm going to use 3 today. So for me today, I'm going to use these 2 colors for my crab, and I'm going to use this color here for my shell. You're also going to need a pair of 9mm safety eyes, your 3.5mm hook, pins and needles, scissors, some stuffing, and at least 1 stitch marker or bobby pin. So a written version of today's pattern will be made available to my patrons and will also be listed on my Etsy, and I will leave links to both in the description down below for anybody who's interested. So there is our crab that we're going to be making today, and we're going to start by making his shell. For the shell, we start at the tightest point of the spiral, and then we work outwards to form, I don't know, the main conch of it. So, grabbing the shell color I'm using today, I'm going to be using this bright yellow, and we are going to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochet. So I actually think this shell piece is a great candidate for any multicolored or variegated yarns that you have at your disposal. I just know that they make it a little bit harder to see what I'm doing on screen, so I'm sticking with a plain color today. So for row 2, we're going to work 1 single crochet. We're going to identify a knot in our yarn, and we're going to try and fix that before we go any further. Just hope it wasn't a load bearing one. Nope, we're good. And then we're going to work 5 back post single crochet. So we do a little back post stitching throughout this whole process to create that spiral on the shell. So back post single crochet is when, instead of working through the loops at the top of the stitch the way we normally do, we're going to instead work around the post of the stitch. So there's front post and there's back post. And for the shell today, we are only doing back post. And what that is you insert your hook around the post of the stitch, inserting from the back, around the post, and then back to the back. So that's what that looks like. You then yarn over or under, pull up your loop, and then finish your single crochet. So there is our first 1 for this row, and we have 4 more of those to do. The stitch does help the shell hold its shape, so if you're somebody who normally substitutes it for the way easier like back loop stitch or skips these stitches altogether, that's not going to work so well this time. And you'll note that what that does, it gives us this little raised ridge, and that's what we're going to be doing for the spiral of our shell. So that brings us to row 3. And in row 3, we are going to simply work an increase into each stitch around to bring us up to 12 stitches. Now, some of you have noticed that I tend to alternate between working in the front loops and both loops when doing my increases. That is because this is a stitch known as the invisible increase. It's a little bit of a controversial stitch just because some people don't think it makes any difference, and that's absolutely fine. I personally swear by it. I think it minimizes the look of those little holes that increases can put into your work, and just helps them like blend in general. I also find that the muscle memory of working first in the front loop and then through both loops really helps me keep count on the longer rows. So that brings us to row 4, and in row 4 we are going to work 12 back post single crochet around again. So that's just, again, working our hook from the back of the stitch around the post to the back of the stitch, yarning over, pulling up a loop, and completing the stitch. And we're going to work 1 of those around each stitch the whole way around. So the other note I'd just like to add is sometimes I get the question about chaining one and slip stitching at the end of each row. I just want to say that if you're somebody who normally doesn't work in a continuous spiral, for this particular shell, you should be working in a continuous spiral. A lot of the time it doesn't really make a massive difference in construction, whether you do it one way or the other. I always work in a continuous spiral, but for this shell you specifically need to. You should be able to see your spiral starting to form. Brings us to row 5. So we're going to work 6 repeats of a single crochet and then an increase around, which will bring us up to 18 stitches in total. Then row 6, we're going to work 12 back post single crochet around. So that should be 2/3 around your piece. And then in the 6 remaining stitches of your row, you're going to put a slip stitch into each of them. Now don't stitch those really tightly. You need to be able to work into them in the next row. Which brings us to row 7, and we're going to work 6 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet. So that will bring your round up to 24 stitches. So there we are at the end of row 7, and at this point you should be able to see what those slip stitches versus those back post single crochet were up to in the previous row in terms of shaping, and we're starting to establish that final shape. So we're going to be working another sort of shaping row for row 8, which is 16 back post single crochet around, so still growing that side larger. And then we're going to be working 8 slip stitches to bring us back around to the start of our row. And once again, I warn you to work those slip stitches fairly loosely because we do need to work into them in the next row. So that brings us to the end of the spiral part of the shell, and now we're going to be forming that last final swirl that fits our crab. So this is done over, we're not even halfway through the shell. So it's done over the rest of the rows. So we start by working 5 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then 2 single crochet. So that should leave you with 4 stitches remaining in your round. And in those, we're going to get a little bit tricky. So make sure that you have your stitch marker on hand. You are going to need that in a minute. So in the next stitch, we're going to work a half double crochet stitch, which is when you yarn over your hook, insert through both loops in this case, yarn over and pull up a loop, leaving you with 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. So there is your half double crochet. And then in the last remaining 3 stitches, we're going to work in the front loops only, so that is the loop closest to you, and we're going to put a double crochet into each of them. So we work our double crochets by yarning over our hook, inserting through the front loop only, yarning over and pulling up a loop, again leaving us with just 3 loops on our hook, but the difference between a half double crochet and a double crochet is that now we yarn over and pull through just the first 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2 remaining loops. So there is our double crochet. Now I am just going to mark the back loop of that stitch, and I'll explain why in the next round. So we're going to double crochet into the last 2 stitches as well, once again working just into those front loops. And you can mark those front loops as well. I find just marking that first one is enough of a guide to help me find my way back. So from here on out, we are no longer working in the spiral. Instead, we will be chaining 1 and turning at the end of each row and working it up like a flat piece, but it will still curve around. I hope that's not too confusing. So we're going to start by chaining 2, turning our work. So we'll start this row by working 3 double crochet, and each one of those will fall into a double crochet from the previous round. We're then going to work a half double crochet. And then we're going to work 25 single crochet all the way back to the start of where our round was. So that's what it looks like from the top or the front. And we've worked into each of the stitches around. So row 11 is more of an addendum to row 10 than it is its own row. I just thought that separating out the instructions might help clarify things a little bit. So all we're doing for row 11 is we're going to continue working in the same direction we have been, so we haven't turned yet. And we're going to identify the loops that we didn't work into when we made those first 3 double crochet. You'll see that I've got the first one there that I marked, but you may have marked all 3, but I can see mine there. And I'm going to work a single crochet into each one of those loops. Like so. So that has now established our new row length as this kind of overlapped spiral. And from here on out, we'll be treating it all as one row. So to finish row 11, we'll chain 1 and turn. And we are now going to work 28 single crochet back along our row. So you'll see that brings us up to those final 4 stitches in our row. And we are once again going to half double crochet in the first one, and then double crochet into each of the last remaining 3. So that's what we look like at the end of row 12. And we're basically just going to keep repeating those 2 rows for rows 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, just to really help the opening of our shell fan out properly. So there we are at the end of row 17. You should have this nice big fan worked up on one side. You've got your sort of spiral knob on the other, and it should be open on the inside. So from here, we're going to start working to close off this curved part while we do still have 4 or 5 rows of extending this fan on the other side. So we're going to start with 3 repeats of 4 single crochet and then a decrease. Like so. We're then going to work 10 single crochet. Bringing you to your final 4 stitches. So we are going to work a half double crochet and then 3 double crochet to get us to the end of the row. And chain 2 and turn. So row 19 starts with 3 double crochet and then a half double crochet, which is a sequence of stitches you should be very familiar with by now. We're then going to work 5 single crochet, and then 4 repeats of a decrease and then 3 single crochet. Chain 1 and turn, bringing us to row 20, which starts with 3 single crochet, and then 4 repeats of a decrease and then 2 single crochet. And then 2 single crochet to get us back to those final 4 stitches, where we will again work a half double crochet and then 3 double crochet. Chain 2 and turn. Row 21 starts with 3 double crochet and then a half double crochet. And you'll see how much we've already closed off the back of this shell. It does curl over inside, and that is intentional. You'll see that our opening is now down to a relatively small size. So we'll carry on, and it's 2 single crochet, then 3 repeats of 2 single crochet and a decrease. So there is the last decrease of those repeats. And then it's just 3 single crochet to finish your row. Chain 1 and turn. So row 22 starts with 2 single crochet. And then we're going to work 3 repeats of a decrease and then a single crochet, but I want you to mark the first decrease that you do. Just like so. You're then going to work another single crochet and another decrease. And this time in our final 4 stitches, we're going to work 3 half double crochet and then a final double crochet at the end. So I'm not chaining to turn here. So I'd like you to count and just confirm that you have 14 stitches in your row, because there's a lot of repeats of the same rows, and that's just a really, it's a good way to end up out of whack. So we have just one final row to finish off our shell here, and all we're going to do is curl where our hook currently is around to where we have our marked stitch here, which should be our 3rd stitch in from the edge. And that is going to be where we start our final row. And that row is just 6 decreases around. And finish off. Remove the stitch marker if you haven't already. And we've got this tiny little opening. I'm just going to take the tail of my yarn and I'm going to pull it through the front loops of each of those remaining 6 stitches. Like so. So that is the back of our shell. I'm just going to use my thumb to curve it into shape. There's no stuffing in it currently. You can choose to put a little bit of stuffing into the tip of it if you wanted to. I would suggest waiting until you've built your crab and just see how he fits and see if he needs any extra furnishings in there to help pad it out. But there is our shell. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that I think, so we've curved it this way because of I'm a right-handed crocheter, and so my stitches curve a certain way, and I wanted the shell to kind of work with that to build up the spiral. But I have it in my head that I believe shells are meant to curve the other way. Does anybody know anything about that they might be able to leave in the comments for us? Because I have just this strange feeling that these shells are kind of correct enough in terms of shape, but they're kind of like a mirror image of what shells actually are. Anyway, let me know if I'm crazy or not. So there is our shell, and if I grab my little crabby friend, just give him a little twist in, that's what your final crab will look like with this shell. So that's kind of what I mean when I say there are interchangeable shells here. But that's not your home, buddy. I need you to come out of your shell a little bit there. Be less of a hermit, as it were. So we're going to pop our shell to one side now and just make us a little crab friend. So as mentioned, I am going to be making my crab as a 2-toned crab. Feel free to complete these instructions all in one color. It will make it easier. So for today, we are going to be starting with the crab body. Now, the crab body is a weird little tadpole kind of shape. It finishes at a point here under the eyes and then curves into this fleshy bit that I've done in a paler color to indicate how squishy and upsetting it is to look at. So for today, I will be starting in my paler tone, which is the bit that will be going inside the shell. And we're just going to start with a magic ring of 6. And then 3 rows of 6 single crochet around for a combined total of 18 stitches. So there's our starting nub, bringing us to row 5, which is 3 repeats of a single crochet and then an increase to get us up to 9 stitches. We're then going to work 3 rows of 9 single crochet around for a combined total of 27 stitches. There is the tail of our little tadpole. So we are going to just grow it up a little bit further. So row 9 is 3 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet to bring you around up to 12 stitches. And then row 10 is 3 repeats of 3 single crochet and then an increase to bring our round up to 15. We're then going to work 3 rows of 15 single crochet for 45 stitches in total, changing to our main tone in the final stitch of row 13. That's the second last stitch there of row 13. And this is the final stitch of row 13. So this is where I'll be working my color change. Please just disregard this if you're working all in one color. So to work color changes for this pattern today, you always work them in the stitch before you need the new color to be active. So how I work those is I insert my hook into the stitch before I need my new color to be active. I yarn over and pull up a loop of my old or existing color. Then I hold that color out of the way and grab a strand of the color I'm changing to, which is a fun orange for me. I pinch it at the base of the stitch on the inside of the work, yarn over and pull it through both loops. Then tug on my tails to tighten the stitch down and settle it into place. So you'll see what that leaves you with is a completed stitch in your old color, but your new color is on the hook ready to go. Now what you can do as well is, depending on whether or not you have to change backwards and forwards between your colors, sometimes it's better to carry them under. But you can just choose to trim off your original color. And you can choose to tie a little knot in those 2 tails just to avoid any future unraveling issues, particularly if you're making something to sell or for somebody to like manipulate and play with a lot. So now I have my new color ready to go. I'm going to work 2 more rows of 15 single crochet for 30 stitches in total. So row 16 is going to be the widest part of the crab body. So we're going to work 5 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet to get us up to 20 stitches around. So there we are at the end of row 16, and we're on our final approach now where we're just going to narrow off to the point of the face. So for row 17, we're going to start with 3 decreases. Then 8 single crochet around the top of the head. And then 3 decreases to finish the row. So we should be down to 14 stitches in our round, and we're going to work 14 single crochet around. So we are going to stop and stuff here before we finish off. So just take a little bit of stuffing and kind of very loosely stuff the tail part of your crab. If you start to see your stitches stretch apart so far, you're seeing stuffing through the gaps, you've stuffed it too hard. The tail should still be able to curve pretty comfortably, because keeping in mind it is going to be stuffed down inside a shell, it needs to be able to like curve when you push it in there. You'll see that mine does still hold its shape, so there is stuffing in there. We're then going to work the final 2 rows to finish off. So row 19 is again 3 decreases. Then 2 single crochet. And then 3 decreases. So that leaves us with 8 single crochet in our round. And then row 20 is a decrease, 4 single crochet, and a decrease, and finish off. So I'm now going to once again use my yarn tail to close off this little opening, same way that we did at the end of the shell. And there is our little shrimp boy. So we're going to pop that to one side for now, and we're going to make him some bits, crab bits. So the next piece that we are going to be making for our little crabby friend today are his eye stalks. So I've decided to make them in my darker color, whereas like on my first crab I've made them in my accent color. Follow your bliss. So for your eyes we're going to start once again with a magic ring of 6. Then working in our back loops only, now that is the loop of the stitch on the side facing away from you, we're going to work 6 single crochet around. So you'll see there that what it does is it leaves those front loops there to form that little edge. Normally I would do that with post stitching. You're welcome. So at this point, grab one of your little 9mm eyes and insert it through that starting magic ring. And I'm going to turn it over and clip that back on now. Some of you have observed that this may not necessarily be the way that you clip the backs onto your safety eyes. This is the way I do it with these particular eyes because I find that it gives me a tighter connection and it gives me a few more pops as well. There is no problem whatsoever if you want to do it the other way. Just keep in mind that this is a very tiny piece, and that is the only reason why I mentioned the specific way I do things, just in case it is going to make a difference. So there is his eyeball. So for row 3 we go back to working through both loops, and we're going to work 2 decreases and then 2 single crochet. And finally, we are going to work 1 row of 4 single crochet around. And finish off. Now, if the really fiddly rows bother you, because I know that 4 single crochet around is a big ask, all you need to do is replace rows 3 and 4 with 6 single crochet around. Your eye stalk will be a little bit fatter at the bottom, but it won't make a huge difference. So there is his first little eye stalk, and I'm just going to whip up another one. Like so. So now our little fella can see. Pop those to one side. Okay, so next up we are going to be forming his little pinchy claws. You can see there he's got little pincers. Nip, nip, nip. So in order to make those, we start at the top shoulder joint, and then we work down towards the tip of the claw. And again, this is a 2-toned piece for me. Feel free to work it just in a single color. It does cut the difficulty down quite significantly. So I'm going to be starting in my darker color with a magic ring of 6 single crochet. I'm then going to work 2 repeats of an increase, a single crochet, and then an increase to get my round up to 10 stitches in total. You're then going to work 10 single crochet around, and then 10 back post single crochet around. Now, unlike with the shell, for these back post single crochet, you could do them as back loop if that's easier for you as well. It'll just mean that you have a less defined ridge around the top part of your claw. So row 5 starts by single crocheting 3 together. So how I do that is I insert my hook through the front loops only of the next 3 stitches. I yarn over and I pull up a loop through all 3, and then I yarn over and complete my stitch. So single crochet 3 together is basically just a name for a decrease that happens over 3 stitches instead of 2. We're then going to work 7 single crochet to finish our round. However, I am going to alternate between my dark and my light colors for this step. Feel free to not do that. So in my next stitch, I'm going to add my new color in. And basically what alternating stitches means is that every single stitch is a color change. So I'm just carrying both colors along and swapping every single stitch. That's what my piece currently looks like. And then for row 6, I'm going to work 8 single crochet around, and I'm going to continue alternating those colors. You want to make sure that for every dark stitch, I'm working a light stitch into it, and for every light stitch, I'm working a dark stitch into it. So that does mean that I've worked 2 light stitches in a row at the start of that row. Doesn't make a big difference, I suppose. It's just a little persnicketiness coming out in me. Snicket feels like a very good name for a hermit crab. And his shell is lemony too. And finally, regardless of what colour you finish on, change back to your pale tone to finish the rest of the claw. So there I am at the end of row 6. We have 8 stitches in our row, and I am going to leave both colours attached for now, even though I'm going to be carrying on in my light tone for a bit, because we're going to want the darker tone to make like the thumb part of the claw. So row 7, we're going to work 8 single crochet around in the back loops only. So those are the loops on the inside of the piece. And what that does is those front loops we haven't worked into get this really cool little like candy cane stripe around them if you've done the color changes like I have. So for row 8, we're going back to working through both loops, and we're going to start by putting 3 single crochet all into the same stitch, and then 7 single crochet back to the start of our row. You should have 10 stitches in your round. We're then going to work a single crochet changing to our dark color. Again, if you're not changing colors throughout this, just keep going, just still work the single crochet. And I'm going to work a 3 double crochet cluster into the next stitch. So what that looks like is I'm going to yarn over my hook, insert it into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I've got 3 loops on my hook there. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only, leaving me with 2 loops on my hook. So there is our first little like stub, and we're going to do 2 more of those into the same stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on our hook. So there is our second stub, and you'll note that each of those little stubs will add an additional loop to our hook. So 1 more, like so. Now before I finish off this 3DC cluster, I am going to add a picot to it. So with these 4 loops on my hook, I'm going to work a picot just through that final loop on my hook. So what that looks like is chaining 3 through just that loop that's closest to the end of my hook, then inserting my hook through the first of those chains and slip stitching. Pop that picot to the front so that it doesn't get lost. So the 4 loops on my hook and the picot, we are now going to change back to our other color. So I'm going to hold my old color out of the way, grab my pale color again, pinching it at the base of that very big stitch, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on my hook and tug to get it to settle down. So there is our like little claw nipper. We're then going to finish off our row by working 3 single crochet, a single crochet 3 together, and then 2 single crochet. So we are at the end of that row. Now at this point I can trim off my darker color because we'll be finishing the rest of the claw just in our lighter color. So for row 10, we are going to work a very simple 8 single crochet around. We're then going to work 2 repeats of a single crochet, a decrease, and then a single crochet to bring our round down to 6 stitches. Now one of those decreases will fall at the front of the claw to help it curve this way. Then the other decrease will fall at the back of the claw to help it curve that way. So finally for row 12, we are going to work 3 single crochet, and then single crochet 3 together. And you'll note that we have not stuffed this piece at all. Finish off. Once again, use your yarn tail to close off your opening. You can give the end of your claw a little bit of a pinch to help it form its shape. There is your little crab claw. And you are of course going to need to make 2 of those. Pop them to one side. So next up we are going to make some crab legs. And the crab legs today come in 2 different sizes. We've got big crab legs and we have small crab legs. So we're going to start with the big ones. And I'm going to be starting in my darker tone with a magic ring of 6 single crochet. We're then going to work 2 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet to get our round up to 8 stitches. Row 3 is 8 single crochet around. Then row 4 is 8 back post single crochet around. Once again, you can replace those with back loop stitching if you prefer. So we then need to narrow down to the thinnest point of our leg, and we're going to do that by working 2 repeats of a single crochet 3 together and then a single crochet. And in the last stitch of this row we are going to change to our pale colour. So there's our first repeat. And in this final single crochet, changing colours. And you can trim off your dark colour, you won't need it again for this piece. So we only have 4 little stitches around the opening of our round there, but we're going to go back up to 8 stitches in round 6. So we start by putting 3 single crochet all into the same stitch. And then a single crochet. Then 3 single crochet all into the same stitch. And then a single crochet. So our round, so our round is now back to 8 stitches. So for rows 7 and 8, we'll be doing 8 single crochet around for a combined total of 16 stitches. Then in row 9, we're going to work 8 front post single crochet around. So we've done back post quite a bit in this pattern already. Front post is actually a little bit easier, I think. So it's still around the post of the stitch, but this time you're going to insert your hook from the front, around the post, back to the front. And you're going to work one of those around each stitch in your round. Like so. So we're then going to repeat rows 7, 8 and 9 for rows 10, 11 and 12. So 2 rows of 8 single crochet around and then a row of 8 front post single crochet. Like so. And then for rows 13 and 14, you have 2 more rows of 8 single crochet. So there we are at the end of row 14, and we have the main meaty part of the leg worked up. So now we just want to finish off in a little point, a little crab foot. So for row 15, we're going to work 3 decreases, and then 2 single crochet. And I will mention that I haven't stuffed this piece or the claws. We won't be stuffing any of the legs. And that leaves us with 5 stitches in our round. And we're going to work 5 single crochet. And then finally in row 17, we're going to work 2 decreases and then a single crochet. Now, if that's just working too tight for you, try just 1 decrease and then 3 single crochet. But you just want this opening to end up as small as possible to create a nice pointy little foot. And finish off. So use your yarn tail to close off the opening. So you want to make 2 of those and pop them to one side. So next up we have our small crab leg, and I'm going to make those entirely in my main orange. Now these are constructed very similarly to your large legs, just at a slightly smaller scale. So for these legs, our widest point is 6 single crochet around, and we just work it up over the course of 12 rows. There is your small crab leg, and you're going to need to make 2 of those as well. So the final piece we need to make are his antenna. So this is a very free-form piece, so I'm hoping you'll stay with me. I want you to start by leaving a longish tail, so a couple of inches, and then attach your yarn to your hook with a slip knot. So that's what that looks like. That's the tail. And we're going to work 4 single crochet over the top of this tail. So what that looks like is I'm holding it taut, inserting my hook under it, I'm pulling up a loop around it, and then I'm yarning over again and pulling through both loops on my hook. So that first stitch is the hardest one, and then still just maintaining tension, we're going to work 4 in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that there. I'm then going to chain 4 really tightly. Like so. We're then going to finish off leaving a longish tail at this end as well. So you can trim off that starting tail. So there is the thick part of the antenna that joins to the head, the thin part of the antenna that sticks out, and then this is like the whiskery bit. And so we'll give him a little haircut once those are attached to trim them to the right size. So there's one. Be careful when cutting off that starting tail as well. I think I cut that one there a little bit too short. And now I'm afraid it'll unravel, so I'll be sewing that one on very, very carefully. It would be wrong of me not to mention that. So 4 single crochet over the tail. Then 4 very tight chains. And finish off. And this time I'm going to trim this one off at a way more reasonable sort of here, and we'll tuck the excess into the head when we attach it. So do this, not that, okay? This. So there are his little antenna-y divots. Okay, so now that we've made all of our pieces, we're going to assemble our crab. So I'm going to start by grabbing my eye stalks and my body piece. And find where you've closed off, and we're going to pin our 2 eye stalks directly above it. Now keep in mind as we assemble this crab that all of your pieces are pretty tightly crammed into the same little spaces. But that's just because the proportions of a hermit crab is a lot of bits crammed into a very small shell. So that's where his little eyes will go. See how he looks kind of like a slug at this point. In fact, it's a pretty passable snail. The shell's too big for him. And at the same time, we are going to grab his little antenna-y bits, and we're just going to take the beefy part at the base of the antenna, and we're going to pin that directly sort of centered underneath the base of each eye. And we're not going to stab ourselves while doing that, because we're being very careful, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Being extra careful if, like me, you cut that tail a little bit too small. So there, he looks very shrimpy at the moment. Now you can leave more of this free and just sew about halfway down, leaving the rest of this to sort of stick out at a bit more of a quirky angle. It's up to you. So secure however much of that length that you like. Just make sure that this bit here and this strand here is definitely sort of flopping free in the breeze. So you could stop and sew those pieces on now, but instead we're going to go and pin the legs on so that we can just do all of our sewing at the same time. So next up, we're actually going to grab his large legs, and I'm going to flatten each of the top shoulder joints and pin them so that the feet point towards the back around row 4 or 5 of the body. So you need to make sure that those legs curve backwards, and you also need to make sure that you're leaving enough room for us to put the claws in front of them. We then pin the top shoulder joint of the smaller legs directly behind those larger legs. They should also point towards the back, and a lot of the time they'll probably stay tucked up inside the shell. So all 4 of those legs should fall on the darker part of the body if you've done a multi-tone crab like I have. So with those 4 legs pinned in place, make sure that your crab fits into the opening of the shell. That's pretty good. So we're going to take our yarn and sew all those pieces on now. I kind of feel like his voice would sound a little bit like Kermit the Frog, so maybe he's Hermit the Crab, or Hermit Crab. Let me know in the comments what you think some good names for them might be, because obviously I've got a pair of them now. Just didn't want either of them to be lonely, which is funny, because like the not so hermit crabs. They can be hermits together. And with that done, you've got your 2 little antenna-y bits here. And You're going to want to trim them off to be approximately the same length. Cut off a little bit at a time. It's just like with a haircut. You can always cut more off, but you can't stick it back on again. And you should find that they pretty naturally like drape in like this little curve position. But if you want to make those like really just like force a certain position, use a little hairspray. Sometimes people get mad at me when I suggest that, but I don't keep starch lying around. If you've got spray starch, use that. You could use a little hair gel, use a little hairspray, use a little PVA glue to set those into position. But unless they're being like consistently crushed, they should hold that position fairly nicely on their own. And finally, we're going to attach our claws. So the final claws of the contract. Now, if you look at hermit crabs, those claws should face sort of with the clipper thumb pointing backwards as they walk on the tip of the claw, but try and have some fun with the posing of it. So your crab could be waving, flailing his claws about, or just sort of gesticulating. It always seems a bit of a shame to me to hide that detail underneath, even though that is technically the pose that they stand in. So what you need to know to be able to attach those is that they need to obviously go in front of his front legs, but you can also sneak them down the front of him a little bit just because there isn't a lot of room to work with here. What I do for mine is I squash the shoulder joint flat and then I basically pin it to the front of the front leg and attach it that way. It kind of gives you a little bit more real estate to work with. I think I'm going to do a little waving crab today. So I'm just going to finish sewing that on now. And so now all you have to do is pop him in his shell. And there is your finished hermit crab. So there is your finished hermit crab. I hope you had fun making him with me today. Now he does need a name, so I'm hoping that some of you will leave me some suggestions down in the comments. But otherwise that's it for this week. Okay, bye.